Hello again. Thank you so much for coming to my workshop. So today we'll be learning about sponsorship fundamentals, how to find prospects, pitch, and close. So I'm Elyse. I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at Major League Hacking. I've been working in sales for over 6 years, and I'm here to help you love the sales process as much as I do. I know that a lot of organizers feel that sponsorship is a necessary evil for planning their events, but I believe if you become comfortable with the sales process, it can be really enjoyable and rewarding. Also, sales skills are super valuable no matter what industry or role you end up in. So hopefully you can pick up some tips today that will serve you for years to come. Okay, so what is on the agenda? So I'm going to be going through the sales process, really just the basics of prospecting, pitching, and closing. We're also going to do some activities that will hopefully get you prepped for when you begin the sponsorship process this coming fall or next spring. And then I'd also like to leave some time for Q&A so you can ask me some questions. So step one in the sales process is prospecting. So in case some of you are unfamiliar, prospecting is the first step in the sales process, which consists of identifying potential customers, aka prospects. So the goal of prospecting is to develop a database of likely customers and then systematically reach out to them, right? In hopes of converting them to a paying customer or sponsor. So some prospecting essentials. You're going to want a list of contacts, a prospecting tool to make your life easier, and a tracking system to keep you organized. So with this list of contacts, you're going to want to make a big prospect list that will become your sales pipeline. And so this sales pipeline is actually shaped like a funnel, right? So at the top, you're going to have hundreds of prospects who you initially reach out to. And so some of them will respond. Some of the people who respond will agree to get on the phone with you. And then some of those people will actually agree to sponsor your event. And so it'll funnel down, right? And in order to make enough money for your event, you need to have a really large top of funnel, AKA a big list of prospects that you reach out to. So if you're ever struggling to raise enough sponsorship for your event, you might want to revisit the top of funnel and make sure that you've reached out to enough people or fill that top of funnel back up. So who to actually reach out to? So there are two buckets: people you know and you have a connection with, which is considered warm outreach. And then the second group of people are people you don't know, right? But people who could be interested in sponsoring. And that would be categorized as cold outreach because they don't know you. So for people you know, these are the ones who are most likely to respond to you and hopefully close, right? So most people will respond to someone that they know. So you'll want to reach out to as many warm contacts as you and your team has before you begin doing cold outreach, right? So people you know include sponsors from past events that you organized or maybe you attended and you met them there, industry contacts, and finally those family ties, right? So you might have a relative who works in the industry and can make a warm introduction on your behalf to the person maybe in their company who is the right person to talk to. So for people you don't know, cold outreach will likely make up the bulk of your prospecting, right? Since not even I know hundreds of potential sponsors, even after doing this for many years, every single day. So since people you don't know are less likely to respond to you, you're going to want to make sure that you reach out to a lot of people who fit the profile of a potential sponsor or buyer. These sponsor profiles include primarily marketing and DevRel folks. DevRel folks at tech companies, and recruiting folks from most companies. So as you know, almost every company nowadays has an engineering team, so you can cast a really wide net with recruiters. And I find that recruiters are generally the easiest people to get on the phone with. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list of potential sponsor profiles, but it's definitely a good place to start. So here I just made a quick list of different job titles that you can search for. So some of them are a little tricky, like for recruiting folks, a lot of people are titled as university relations managers, and they will probably make up the bulk of the recruiting people that you're reaching out to. And then also in DevRel too, there can be a little bit of variation in the titles. So if you want to just kind of jot this one down, it should help you later. Okay, and now moving on to our first activity. So I would like for you to make a list of 20 people or more, if you can, all of the warm contacts that you have, that your team has possibly, if some of you are here in teams. And then all the companies that you think would be interested in hearing from you. So it could be like your favorite developer platform, or you know, companies that you've seen at industry events, companies that you've heard about in the news. So just take 5 minutes and jot down this list, please. And you can say stuff in the chat so I can talk to you while you do this. Could you possibly? Yes. Happy to go back to the last slide. You're welcome. All right, so we'll take like 3 more minutes. How's everyone doing with this activity? DevRel means developer relations. So those are the people who care about developers, right? And whether that means like developers who are their customers, and hearing from them and making sure that they have like the documentation and resources they need to use their product at the enterprise level. Or it could be from like a marketing sense and trying to get new developers on the platform. The prompt, Ezekiel, is to create a list. Here, I'll go back. Make a list of all of the folks that you know and companies who you think could be a good fit for your event. So people who've like been in the news, or you know, companies that you've seen out at events. Is there a preferred platform that sponsors tend to use over the others? So I would say always reach out via email, not LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn as like a last resort if you can't figure out what their email is. Like I personally don't always check my LinkedIn, you know, like on a daily basis. So messages can get lost in there and it can feel a little spammy. All right, we'll do 1 more minute. And honestly, I want you to create this list so you have something to get started with. Where to find contacts for potential sponsors. So I'll actually get right into that after this. Okay, cool. Oh God, Kat says we want to see Ted. He's making all sorts of noise. I'm sure you can. Teddy is my dog, but I'm like using a standing desk right now. Ted, come here. Come here. Maybe later. Okay. Okay, folks, we're gonna get back into it. All right. So prospecting tools. So my ultimate pro tip for prospecting is to use a prospecting tool. So my favorite one is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So I believe you can actually get it for free for 2 weeks, like a 2-week trial. And during that time, you can generate a massive list of contacts to reach out to. And even I think after that, it's like $50 a month or something. It's pretty reasonable when you think about hackathon budgets. And I promise it'll be worth every penny in the time that it saves your team from having to, search for contact information on the internet, and the sheer amount of people that you'll be able to contact through using this tool. So here are some other ones, Interseller and Hunter.io. Sometimes they like connect together, but I would get started with LinkedIn. So like what makes for good outreach, right? The email that you send is really important. So first off, you want to establish a friendly but professional tone. So most professionals, working professionals, especially in the tech industry, do not use a formal tone through email. So, keep it light, but still somewhat professional, right? You'll want to make sure that you have the essential event information included as well, and the purpose of your outreach, so i.e. sponsorship opportunities. And you'll also want to convey the value that is relevant to them and their role. So you can do separate campaigns for DevRel folks versus recruiting folks. So an example of that is like saying that they'll be able to get developers on their platform, through sponsorship, right? And then finally, make the email short and to the point. So people don't typically like to read long emails, especially if it's, from someone they don't know. So I recommend keeping it short and to the point. And then ask to set a meeting, and don't give them pricing until after you've spoken to them and you've had that initial call. Sometimes you can work that out over email if they're hesitant to get on the phone with you, but I would at least engage in some sort of back and forth before you give away pricing. And then from here, keep following up until they respond to you at least a few times. So yeah, it's super common for emails to get lost. And it's really a wasted email and a wasted contact if you only reach out one time. So I recommend a minimum of 3 times. And then you can kind of vary up what you're saying in those emails. Like you can ask, hey, are you the right person for me to be reaching out to at Nexmo? Or is there somebody else that I should be speaking to? And a lot of times they'll respond with their colleagues' information. So once you've actually gotten people to agree to get on the phone with you, you're going to have to pitch to them, right? So before the call, take 5 minutes to do research on the person and company. This is the best thing that you can do before you get on the phone. So spend 5 or 10 minutes. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is also a really great tool for this. So you might find that they used to work at one of your favorite developer platforms, right? Which is something that you can mention. Another pro move is to see if the company was in the news recently and find a way to work that into conversation. Maybe they just got a huge round of funding and you can congratulate them on it on the call. So doing a bit of prep really goes such a long way for your own confidence going into the call and the credibility that you'll really quickly be able to establish by working it in a little bit. So here is the pitching framework that I like to use. I recommend keeping a framework next to you while on a call, so you make sure not to miss any steps, and also to just make you feel comfortable. You really want to feel comfortable and confident when you're on the phone with people. It'll make it way more enjoyable for both of you. Sorry, there's all this noise from outside. I live in Brooklyn. This motorcycle. Anywho, so you can make a more detailed framework with specific questions if that's going to help you as well. So it begins with banter, right? So the first thing to keep in mind is you're gonna want to just make some quick conversation with them. It seems obvious, but there are a lot of times where I'll get on the phone with someone and maybe they just launch right into it and we don't get a chance to do the banter part, and it just feels a little bit awkward. So, take 2 minutes to ask where they're from, how's the weather in San Diego, where really it doesn't matter. You just want to form like a little bit of a human connection before you start talking business. So from here, introduce yourself and why you set up the call and set an agenda. So first of all, also thank them for making time to speak to you, and then introduce yourself. And you should also set a little bit of an agenda, but it can be pretty loose. So usually I like to say something like, I'd love to talk to you about the event that my team is planning, and also learn a little bit about your DevRel goals at Twilio to see if our event is a good fit. It's a little bit of a softer sell, and really kind of sets it sets an agenda and lets them know kind of what's coming and how the call will flow. So make sure they know what a hackathon is, and introduce your event. So you can then ask, like, first off, like, are you familiar with hackathons? So this question might be more relevant for non-DevRel folks, so like recruiting or just general marketing people. So if you are speaking to someone who works in developer relations, you can begin by giving a brief overview of your specific event, since hackathons, as a lot of us know, they take many different shapes and sizes. If it is a recruiter and they might not know about, like, what a hackathon is, let them tell you what they know and what they don't know, right? If they don't know anything, do your best to take this moment to convey how awesome and impactful these events are. Because, I mean, this is your community. This is obviously, like, this is a passion project for most of you. So this is a really opportune moment to do like an emotional sell here, and get them super invested by showing how passionate you are. And then if they are familiar with hackathons, dig into their experience. So which event did they go to? What did they do while they were there? You're going to like quickly learn if this is something that they would want to do again, if they got value out of their last sponsorship, and if they would be looking to do something similar, or like how you can change it up if they didn't get value out of their last sponsorship. So from here, you're going to want to start gathering info. So start digging. So you're going to want to ask some questions to learn about this person's goals. Does it make sense for them to sponsor your event, right? Ultimately, you want to pitch to someone who is going to get value as a sponsor. So knowing what is important to them will also help you persuade them once you go into pitch mode to become a sponsor by highlighting specific package features that are relevant to their set of goals. So you can start digging, like with a recruiter, for example, by just asking something as simple as like, so like this fall for recruiting events, it doesn't have to, you don't have to like, grill them with hard-hitting questions or anything like that. Can, still feel pretty conversational. So our next activity. So this is something that I would like us to do in the chat, and you all seem pretty chatty, so I think it's going to work well. So I would love if everybody could just post 1 or 2 questions, or honestly as many as you want. Post questions that would be relevant to developer evangelists or recruiters, anyone that you could be on a sales call with or sponsorship call. And just try not to repeat ones that have already been posted. And we'll take a few minutes to do this, please. Okay, so Trey said, what do you expect from an exceptional recruiting event? That's a really good question. I'm going to steal that. I was going to say I might, no, I'm going to steal it. So Siddharth said, how do you see to support our event? So that might be a little bit too broad. Let's focus on questions about them and like their strategy or how they evaluate opportunities. Let's try and get a couple more. Great. Christopher Gu. Have you sponsored student-run events? Yep. How did those turn out for you? Perfect. I mean, just starting with that question, you can just dig and dig and dig and dig from there. What are your goals? Totally. What's your current recruiting strategy? Have you recruited from hackathons in the past? Yep. Oh man, so many good ones are coming in. How does your company typically recruit? Yes. What does your company look like? What does it look for, rather, when recruiting? What comes to mind when you think of the word hacker? I'd be careful with that one. Because, yeah. So, I mean, even though, you know, our community uses that term pretty freely, a lot of people who like work at companies don't, you know, they have a negative association with it. So you can totally use it. I mean, I work for a company called Major League Hacking, so it comes up a lot. But a lot of times I do have to explain the difference in that, you know, we are not like purely like security related. If they have sponsored before, what were things you liked about the hackathons you attended? Totally. Oh, okay. Ezekiel is changing it from hacker to hackathon. Okay. So keep in mind, folks, that it's not just about like getting them to talk. It's more so you want to find all of these like little golden nuggets that are going to help you pitch to them later on. So, you know, have your sponsorship tiers and your offerings in mind so that you can then prescribe later on, you know, oh, you're looking for, you know, diversity. Cool. Well, you know, our, you know, like the female diversity, or I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue tied here. You know what I mean. Cool. Okay, great. You all did a great job and you came up with so many good questions. So what I would recommend, take a minute to copy and paste some of these questions that were put in the chat so you can use them later on. What would constitute a successful recruitment event? For sure. Yeah, I often ask, like, what are your success metrics? Because I'm sure a lot of you who have been through the sponsorship process have realized that it's not always super easy to like quantify return on investment for people, especially if they care about like brand awareness, which is, you know, generally not something that's that you can really move the needle on with like one event. So it's really important to know like what specific things they're going to take back to their team that are meaningful and will show that like this was a successful event for us. Okay, great. I'm going to get back into it. Exactly. Yep, agreed. Some are just interested in resumes. Yep, totally. Okay, great. That was awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, great. So getting back to the pitching framework. So the next step is actually pitching. So here you're going to want to bring it on home and transition back to your event. Use all the info that you've gathered to recommend a specific sponsorship package or tier. So you can, you know, start by saying like, cool, thank you so much for sharing all that info with me. That's super helpful. I'd love to tell you now a little bit more about our event and which sponsorship tier might make sense for your goals. So here you can expand on how sponsors get involved and what they can expect to get from their sponsorship, and then focus on how your event and sponsorship offering will be specifically valuable to them based on what they've told you. So yeah, I mean, look back on your notes from the meeting and yeah, just tie back like really clear value points. And then you're going to want to answer some questions because I'm sure they will have many. And questions really are your friend. So you'll be able to do a comprehension check. So just making sure that you're on the same page with the person and they understand what they can get out of a sponsorship. It also allows you to iterate on the ideas if maybe you didn't, hit the mark the first time with your recommended sponsorship tier, and you can provide more info that will help you close. It also demonstrates your expertise, not only about your event, but also maybe the industry that they work in. And you can gauge interest this way. This is something called buying questions. So buying questions are when the sponsor or the prospect starts asking really specific questions that would lead you to believe that they're serious about this opportunity, right? And then it's also going to inform your follow-up. So if they're asking a lot of questions about demographics and you don't have demographic info listed on your prospectus deck, then you know to include that in your follow-up over email. And then so also in this instance, if you're able to use case studies, they are definitely your friend. So case studies, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, they're basically just stories about past sponsors' success. And they help build the prospect's confidence that they'll receive a return on their investment by sponsoring your event. So that segues into our final activity. So I'd love for you all to make a list or jot down in the chat again. I thought that went really well about which sponsorships were memorable to you. Discuss the most successful ones and that you'd be willing to share with a prospect. And even if you're a first-time organizer, if you remember, seeing a really cool event activation at another hackathon, then that can also be just as valuable. When you're, coming up with ideas, on the phone of what cool things that they could possibly do. So an example would be from last year's Hackcon, Microsoft did yoga. And that was a really fun thing. There was a lot of people who went out, myself included. There are lots of embarrassing pictures of me actually doing yoga from last year's Hackcon. But it was a really great way for us to interact with the Microsoft team. So that's just one example. So just take 5 minutes to jot down a list. And feel free to post in the chat. That's great, Trey. So case studies are just stories of what sponsors did at the event. Yeah, but they're success stories, right? So you can keep it kind of general, like the story that I just gave about Microsoft, or it can be really specific of, I keep using Twilio, but Twilio was a sponsor of last year's event. They did a prize category. They were able to get 50 people using their API. There were 10 projects, and the really, really cool winners, you can send project examples to people so they can see what sorts of projects hackers are creating. Yes, Chris Gu, he is the master. Connections are everything. My most memorable sponsor story, current CIO of Panera used to work at MasterCard and actually hired my mom to her job, and now they're friends. What? So I hit him up and Panera became our top sponsor. That's amazing. I pitched to Panera way back in the day too. It didn't work out though. This is a long time ago. Oh, I love that. We had IBM sponsor us with inflatable mattresses. Not only did the hackers get to sleep on them, but they got to take them home. How cool at Hack NYU. That's a great event. Over in downtown Brooklyn. Okay, cool. We'll take another minute. But again, the goal of this is to get you thinking, get you prepped for when you start having these conversations, that you'll have these case studies in your back pocket. Something that we did when I first joined MLH about 3 years ago was we were putting together kind of our sales playbook, and we had a whole big Google Doc that just had tons of different stories from past sponsors that I could bring up on calls. And they really, really help. At Hack TCNJ, we had Snapchat sponsor for a prize category. Great. Yeah, so I mean, Snap has great name recognition. So you definitely want to name drop them. And also I would just like share some details about the success they saw through that prize category. And just like also like what was included, like did they have engineers come on site? Did they do a workshop? What worked well for them? Okay, great. So getting back to the pitching framework. So this next step is just gauging interest. So ask them what they think. Ask them what they think, right? And if the sponsorship tiers fit with their budget. So don't be afraid to put them on the spot a little bit and ask about their budget, right? I know a lot of organizers can be a little afraid to ask about money. They think that it's rude, but it's really not. So this line of questioning can open up additional questions and really give you crucial insight. So if the person is serious, so if they say like, this sounds great, this sounds like a really exciting opportunity, you can then ask like, great, is there anything specific that I can send you in follow-up? Or, what's your decision-making process look like? What's your timeline for this? And then you can kind of, those are like good closing questions. And then from there, you'll set next steps. So you can let them know of your deadline, but you're gonna, this is how you kind of wrap up the call. You ask them what the decision-making process looks like again. And also just establish like clear steps that both parties, both you yourself will do and that they should do in follow-up and when. It's good to have kind of accountability on both sides. And then from there, you're done, right? So you just thank them for their time and hang up. So the pitch is done, and now it's time to close, which can happen over the phone or over email. So the first thing to do when you get off the phone with someone is to follow up. You're going to want to strike while the iron is hot. So send all the relevant info as soon as possible. And, if you have your prospectus deck prepared, just go ahead and send that right away. And then if you wanted to maybe elaborate a little bit about what you spoke about, so you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel with your deck every single time you send it to someone, you can do that in the body of the email. And then also make sure you send all that other specific info, like, the demographics or, case studies or anything like that came up on this specific call. And then honestly, it will just save you stress down the road if you just get it out right away. Because then you don't have to think about it really anymore, just doing the follow-up portion. And from there, you can just start pinging them. And you're going to want to ping them like every few days. If they did say like, hey, I have a meeting next Monday, I won't be able to let you know until then. Keep that in mind. Don't ping them before that date that they told you. And then if you are trying to kind of like reignite the conversation, if they go, silent on you, you can offer to get back on the phone to answer questions or, to see, when I say bring in a decision maker, I wouldn't quite use that language over email. I would say something like, like, is there anybody else from your team you would like to include on a call? Because a lot of times too, something to keep in mind is that like, once you get off the phone with someone, you're rarely going to be talking to a decision maker. A lot of times they have to bring your pitch back to their team and, do your job for you, essentially. So if you can kind of bypass them having to be the messenger there and get the decision maker on the phone or more people from the team so you can get more people on your side, that will only benefit you. And a lot of times it will make their life easier. So also, it's super easy to lose track of all the conversations you're having. So use a system that allows you to track meeting notes and the opportunity stage. So I use Salesforce, but I know that there are other methods out there that aren't quite as costly. And then my other pro tip is having a weekly sales or sponsorship stand-up with your team. So this is definitely going to keep you organized, it's going to keep you on the same page, and will keep the excitement in the air. And it'll also help you like raise some red flags if maybe you're not meeting your goals, and then you can kind of meet as a team and discuss how you can get back on track. So then eventually you're going to get a yes, and then you're going to get paid. And so make sure once you do get that yes that you send your invoice right away. And then you celebrate. So the beauty of the sales process is that it usually ends with success. So take a moment to celebrate with your team and reflect also on what helped you be successful. And if you get a no, don't sweat it. Thank the person for their time. Say that you hope to work with them in the future. Do your reflection here and evaluate why didn't it work out. But ultimately, just keep trucking. It's totally a numbers game, and getting no's is just a part of the process, and it shouldn't deflate your confidence. Also, I know some salespeople don't like to take no for an answer, but personally, I tend to kind of cut my losses and focus on people who are interested in sponsoring, especially if it was super clear why they didn't want to move forward with us. So, again, it's a numbers game. You want to focus on your funnel and make sure that you have a large top of funnel and that you're moving conversations along. And eventually you will hit your targets. So that's all I have. And I would love to answer some questions and bring some people into the stream. Let me stop share. Yeah, so, happy to answer questions that you post in the chat, but also would love to hear from some of you over video. What was your first sponsor call like? Honestly, I can't remember because it was so long ago. So yeah, I started doing sales. I had kind of a hybrid role of sales and account management when I first started, and I was in a different industry. But for a long time, I found sales calls to be incredibly nerve-wracking. And, I had to learn kind of all this stuff along the way, but frameworks really helped me practice. I used to do so many mock calls with John and Swift. We would do training every single morning. When closing, do you have sponsors sign contracts? Do you know of any examples of sponsorship contracts for hackathons? Yeah, so I'm sure that I would have actually the legal stuff I'm not 100% on. So it depends, right? So I would say if it's a deal that's, 10 grand and under, if you can just invoice them, that's what I try to do. Especially because we are selling kind of like one-off sponsorships right now, as opposed to these year-long season deals that have a lot of different deliverables. And then Chris, also, if we're able to give you like a boilerplate contract, I can send that over to you. I just have to double check if that's like something that we can do legally. Any advice on how to overcome a fear of getting on a call? Oh my God, totally. I am a slight introvert and feel like I'm just gonna mess up the pitch if I do get a call. Yeah, so I would just say, so really it just takes a lot of practice, which I know that's not super helpful, but you want to be prepared. So doing that like 5 or 10 minutes of prep, that's really going to help you. Also having the framework next to you, because I don't know about you all, but you know, I can very easily get like a brain fart moment where I'm like, wait, what am I doing? What am I talking about? So having that framework next to you, it helps you get you back on track if you do forget where you are. And then also aside from that, I would just say like, I like to do some like power poses or to just like loosen up before like a big call. That's what I did before this, honestly. How do you pitch what's in it for them? So that's a great question. So again, I mean, it's really about learning what they're trying to accomplish. And most of it is pretty simple. So, you know, if you're talking to a DevRel person and they're saying, we want to get developers on our platform, cool, come do a prize category at our hackathon and you'll be able to incentivize developers to get, to work on your platform. It's as simple as that, right? If they're looking for product feedback, like, cool, you can bring mentors out, you can do a workshop where then you listen to the participants of that workshop and get really qualitative feedback on their experience getting onboarded. Also, we do a post-event survey where we can capture a lot of feedback through there and then get that to your team post-event. So, that there are like really clear ways, the way that you design your sponsorship packages that relate to these folks in their field. For example, if the budget is $3,500 and we already got $1,300, how do you achieve the remaining budget to reach the target budget? Again, I mean, it's all about that funnel, right? If I'm understanding you correctly, it's like, how do you reach your goals, your sponsorship goals? It's really just about making sure that you're engaging enough folks and having enough conversations and moving them through the pipeline. Just something that became important recently because some sponsors wanted to back out because our event was postponed due to COVID. Oh, okay, that was regarding the contracts. I see, Chris. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, I'm a bit separated from the legal stuff, but I highly recommend talking to John or Swift or even Nick about that. They'll be able to provide you with some more concrete info there. Cold emailing. When you mentioned LinkedIn, have you done LinkedIn direct messages or would you find, yes. So I recommend getting people's emails. And so through LinkedIn, you can source their email and then load that into a campaign and then just fire out a bunch of emails that way. How do you hold mock calls, help prepare a new team as, oh yeah, so this is great. Training is so important, and that's also going to really help build your confidence for when you do actually get on the phone with someone. So usually the way we would do it is like, we'd sit around in a circle. You can also, of course, do it digitally. That's even better. And one person is the prospect, the other one is the organizer, right? And have the person like have a specific role at a company. And that's all you know about them. And then you just practice from there. And, you can run like certain points of the call. So a lot of times we would just do like, for months, we would just like focus on banter and like focus on doing an introduction and just really breaking it down. A lot of times too, writing stuff down, introductions specifically, that will really help me. Okay. Oh, yeah. So Jamie, she pointed out that there might be some sponsorship LARPing. Cool. How do you convince a past sponsor who wasn't convinced of the benefits to come back as a sponsor? Yeah, that one's tough. Well, so I think that it's really just about listening to them, their needs, what didn't go well, kind of admitting, like if admitting fault in a way. You want to be like humble about that sort of thing. And then making a strong case for why things will be different this year. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the best I can say there. I mean, with a single event, there aren't too many other levers that you can pull other than like giving someone their money back, but I don't recommend doing that. What extra incentive can we offer to sponsors in virtual hackathons? That's a great question. So I've been finding, let's see. So you can do like all the same digital stuff. So like putting them up on the website, the pre-event email, social media. You can also, we add them in the Discord, like having a dedicated Discord channel. We have that for this event. Also, like having the mentors, even though I found that hackers aren't reaching out to mentors in quite the same way as they do in person. But also the workshops are quite valuable and have super high attendance. And we've been scheduling those right after the opening ceremony, and we'll give them like a 2-hour time block, or you might want to split that up depending on how many sponsors you have. The other thing that I will mention too is that because your budgets are probably a lot smaller here, you can bring on fewer sponsors and they will likely get more value out of the sponsorship because it's not so crowded. And I know that means, a lot to folks. Also, like, kind of the age-old stuff of like resumes, product feedback, doing the surveying. Surveying is huge for people. And you can even ask them, like, what would make this super valuable for you? What have you looked for, with other sponsorships to prove out that ROI and see if you can do something special for them? Is it taboo to reach out to multiple contacts from one company? Great question, Trey. No, it is not. I do that all the time. So yeah, I mean, what I'll say is I tend not to reach out to people who have the same location, but now that we're all virtual, most of these people are probably working from home and they're not sitting right next to each other. And even sometimes it will even happen where people will reach out to us at MLH and they'll send like 6 messages to everybody on the team, or it's like 6 different people on the team. And it's like kind of silly, but honestly, if they're worth talking to, like it doesn't matter. Like one of us, the right person will get on the phone with them. So no, it is totally not taboo. And honestly, I recommend it. So you can get in touch with someone from that company. All right, well, folks, this went by so fast. I think that's it for us. I hope that this was valuable to everyone. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate how much you all participated in the chat section. This was super fun for me. I hope you all have a wonderful Hackcon, and best of luck with sponsorship in the coming year. You can always reach out to me via email, Elyse@mlh.io, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I would love to talk to you and, give you some pointers or feedback or anything that you need. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.